Welcome to the Elk Season Podcast, Season 3, Episode 30. Today is December 19th, 2024. We are 253 days away from next elk season.
Which doesn't feel like a whole lot of time.
Oh, no. We are the Chambers Brothers. My name's Harold.
I'm David.
And tonight on the Elk Season Podcast,
We've got quite a few things going on here. Grizzly Confidential, pick up where
Yes.
you were at with that. Some more bear stuff there. Poaching in eastern Idaho, a couple PSA announcements, elk migration, and what we do with elk in places where there's too much snow. Snakes. Why do you have to bring snakes to the show?
well, I don't know.
So that and a whole bunch more on the Elk Season Podcast.
All right. And then,
You know what? You should just leave that in and get a guitar to play over the top of your air guitar.
oh, I will.
Okay.
Oh, don't you worry. Well, so normally I just play the air guitar over us and going, okay, yeah. And I just have a thing up on screen that says the Elk Season Podcast has the date. A couple things about the date, real quick. It is very near the solstice,
Yes, it is.
which means
It's going to start getting longer days.
only 3 more seasons until elk season.
Yeah,
We're
that's
25% our way back around to elk season.
I know. I wasn't lying when I said 253 days does not feel
Yeah.
like a lot of time.
Yeah.
It always comes quick every year.
Winter is coming. Winter is here. Okay, basically, right? Tomorrow, Sunday, that's winter.
Yeah.
3 months in, it'll be March. 3 more months in, it'll be spring to summer, and then summer goes by so fast it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. It goes
It
by
does.
so fast.
Yes, it does.
You sit around in Idaho, you sit and you wait and you wait and you wait for the good weather. And as soon as the good weather comes, it's too hot to go outside, and you wait and wait and wait till elk season.
Yep.
And then you force yourself to go out no matter what the weather is.
And then you wait for
Yeah.
elk to show up.
Last summer, I got into a really good habit of just doing overnighters in the mountains.
Yeah.
I only got to do 3, but I'm definitely planning some more. I definitely want to take you to that one lake that we've been near.
Yeah.
It was the most beautiful of all 3 places that I went.
That's crazy that it's because I thought Iron Bog was beautiful.
It is.
But Fishpole
there's
apparently.
more. There's
more
more back there. Just incredible. So, and you get it on the right day, and on the right day in summer,
Of course.
helps
I've
too.
been up there on the wrong days.
Oh yeah, same here. So that's where we are in the year. We are one season, right? If you had to pick one day to hunt, it would be probably the equinox.
Yeah.
Probably September 21st, right in there.
or in the week after that.
Right. It'd be a week, give or take.
Yep.
And so here we are, one season into it. It's a week, give or take, of the solstice, and we're gonna get right into it. We're gonna get right into
Grizzly Confidential.
our new goals for the new year. Well,
Sorry,
we'll talk about.
I wasn't following you like I should have been. You're
no.
talking about what happens when we come back for season 4.
Yeah. Well, when we come back for season 4, which we'll address at the end of this. We don't need to talk about it right now.
Sorry.
We'll talk about. No, that's my bad. We'll talk about Grizzly Confidential.
To be continued.
Because another thing ties into this, and that is the Boone and Crockett. The Boone and Crockett scores that we talked about, and we have. I found a really cool video on TikTok.
Yeah.
It's Clay Newcomb on the Meat Eater podcast. He does the Bear Grease podcast, but Clay Newcomb's on the Meat Eater podcast, and he's talking about how they score bears, and it's basically a measurement of the skull, how wide and how long.
Very large calipers.
Right? Because even though some people are taller than others, sometimes the shorter person has a longer wingspan.
Yeah.
And you say, well, how do we really get these measurements and say who had the biggest bear?
Right.
And so the Boone and Crockett Club got together, which was, I believe Teddy Roosevelt was a founding member of the Boone and Crockett Club, which initially is conservation, right? They hunt and they realize it's a finite resource and they realize it needs conservation. And so they started the Boone and Crockett Club. And part of the Boone and Crockett Club is keeping track of who's got the biggest, right? It's
Sure.
it's a very guy thing. It's very locker room kind of thing.
But which is something I've never understood. Like, I'm a man, but I don't understand the whole mentality of it, because it's like, it's silly to me. But to each their own.
I agree. I agree.
If somebody gets something out of it, though, go for it.
Yeah, I really agree. I really agree, because I know of a record book elk here in Idaho. And the hunt sounds like something I would never want to be a part of. Right? They shot with a rifle from a distance, and they were able to roll the elk into a trailer to take it home.
Yeah.
That's okay. I just don't want to be a part of that. I just don't.
Yeah.
That's not the story I want to write for myself. And so, the over the counter tag, public land, and with a bow, right? That's the story we're selling with archery elk as the greatest outdoor sport in North America. Thank you. You're getting it.
I am. I'm coming along. It might be
Year
season
4.
3, but I'm
year
getting
4.
there.
You'll be right in. Right in the same
I'll be
page.
there.
So we have the Boone and Crockett Club, and we have to understand hunting is conservation.
Yeah.
So let's go back to Grizzly Confidential.
Yeah. Okay.
They're on Kodiak Island, which, by the way, is the second largest island in the United States, second only to the big island of Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
So Kodiak Island's big. And they have this subspecies of bear, the Kodiak bear. And they're Kodiak grizzlies. The largest congregation of grizzlies is on the falls where they have Fat Bear Week, right? That is Kodiak Island. No, maybe it's not.
No.
It's not. I'm sorry. That's different. But anyway, I want to talk about Kodiak Island. Sorry about that. Because I read some more of the book. We're not there yet.
You're only human after all. I don't know if I can sing that.
It's true. So what they wanted to do is they understand that there could be too many bears on Kodiak Island, and they need to hunt them, and they need help. How much money would it take to go in as a government agency, how efficient they are, and go out there and make sure you're getting the right bears? We're talking darts and helicopters, and make sure you kill the boars and not the sows, and make sure they're the right age. And that's just one extreme of why we don't do it that way. And the other extreme is enlisting the help of hunters. Hunting is conservation. And so they have, are you familiar with the Christmas Day bird count?
Remind me.
Every Christmas, the National Audubon Society recruits thousands, tens of thousands of people to go out and bird count.
Oh, wow.
Every Christmas. And they do that because we want to get a census of where they are everywhere, because I don't want to count. It can't be a different day, because I'm going to count birds you counted.
Okay.
So everybody has to go out to a different place on a different day and say, hey, these are the birds I observed, and this is how many I observed. And it's a great way having that. And I'm not sure if it's actually Christmas Day or it's New Year's Day or something, but it's
a dedicated day.
It's a dedicated day. And so they're doing the same thing on Kodiak Island, where they do a census and they enlist all the guides. Okay. These guides hunt bears. It's very expensive to go and hunt bears, but a lot of guys want to do it. And you have to, if you don't live on the island, you have to have a guide.
Yeah.
And so these guys know the bears. And if they all got together at the busiest hunting time and said, let's make sure and count the bears and do a census, and they can give their own GPS, they can spot across the hill, try to give the bears GPS, so there is no double up of this census of the bears on Kodiak Island. So I just really like that example of hunting is conservation. But it went further than that. How do you visually identify a boar over a sow?
I have no idea.
That sounds hard.
It does.
Right? As much as when we can't see an elk's antlers, we go, man, that looks like a bull. Mm-hmm. And 8 times out of 10,
large cow.
8 times out of 10, it's a bull.
Oh, that's what I meant to say.
Right? Right. I mean, most of the time, sometimes it's a cow. Sometimes it's wishful thinking.
Right.
I might even go down to 60% because we do a lot of wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I was at.
That's a pretty big elk. I bet it's a bull. Well, let's get the phone scope up. And I did a lot of packing with the phone scope this fall.
Yeah, you did.
And I liked it because of exactly that. You say, well, it could be a bull. It might be this. Well, let's just see. Oh yeah, it is or it isn't. But we'll know with that spotting scope, with the phone scope.
Right.
And so some of the visual identifications that they use, some of the cues that they use, is a boar grizzly. I don't know how much this translates to black bears or other bears, but a boar grizzly, when he feeds, he will feed in front of his paws. His neck is longer.
Oh.
A sow will feed between her paws, right? She has to get her face down between her paws. And a little bit of that difference is just in a longer neck.
Wow.
Also, a bigger hump.
I was going to say, I would say the hump is probably bigger on him.
Yeah, it is. They're the boars are just have those big shoulders, and that hump in their shoulders is for digging. That hump is for moving lots of stuff, and they're big and strong. And so that was another way. I wish I'd written some of it down, but there were some other things that you and as they're talking, you're realizing, man, the way they're seeing these grizzlies is so subtle, right? But they're so right. They're so right almost every time. They're like, oh, that's actually, it looks like a sow. That's a young male. Or that looks like a young male. That's actually a sow. Because the point of the conservation is they want to keep breeding animals, but they want to get rid of some of the older males who are no longer reproductive. They're not reproductively viable because they're just not the biggest and the strongest anymore, but they're still living. And you want to make room in the ecosystem for more bears. And so it's important to kill bears, to kill the boars. When they do, so the way they have the limit set up, every animal that comes in has a blood sample taken. It's tagged. It's by Kodiak officials. Every bear that comes off that island has a certain amount of genetic testing done. They've taken a tooth. They've taken blood. Right? They know every bear going off that island. And so when they get to a certain quota, well, listen, we have a quota. It's, let's say 50 bears, 100 bears, but it's only 20 females, or it's only 35 females. So you may have only harvested 70 bears, but once you get to that 35 female threshold, hunting stops on the island. And so being able to visually identify boars is extremely valuable for these outfitters. And so they become good at it. Then another point from Grizzly Confidential was when you watch the falls, and the falls are not on Kodiak.
No.
I want to say Katmai.
Yeah.
Does that sound right? The Katmai Falls?
Yeah.
If you look at Katmai Falls, you don't just see bears feeding. You see bears in a social hierarchy.
Yeah.
Who are constantly moving according to that hierarchy. Right? There's good places. There's pools. There's a hot tub. Right? There's a big pool where if the biggest grizzly wants to hang out there, that's where he's going to hang out. And the other bears respect that. And they go, okay. And one of the next most important places is up on the falls, right? To catch those salmon jumping over. Yeah. So you don't see the inexperienced little guys in the falls, right? But what the little guys will do is, because the grizzlies will high grade, right? They'll get a salmon and just slurp the eggs out of it and go get another salmon. Right? So you have these subadult bears who are going around eating the scraps of the other big bears and sometimes just stealing.
Yeah.
Right? There's this whole structure of social interaction going on at this feeding site. So I will look for that next time Katmai Falls comes up on my scroll. And sometimes I will just have it running in the background.
I do too.
And then go back and check it.
On my YouTube channel, I have a folder that's private that I have different locations of just live feeds. I have one from Jackson, Wyoming.
Oh yeah,
I've got stuff from different national parks. I've got that one. In fact, it's that feed that started this whole thing for me. And so I've just got I've got Yosemite in there somewhere.
Oh,
I've got
cool.
Zion's in there.
Wow.
I mean, people have these cameras up in certain places, and they're just feeding 100%. Like, you got the eagles' nests.
Yeah.
That are
Oh
in
yeah, I
various
love
places.
those. I love those.
Just whenever I'm feeling I need some nature in my life, I can pull that up in the background. And
boy, have you seen the one clip of the eagles? And one eagle takes one branch and just moves it, and the other eagle goes, "No, I want it over here."
I have not seen that.
And the other eagle goes, "It's going over here." And the other is like, "No, it's going over," and it's clearly like this
domestic
spousal
dispute. Like, no, you can't put your gaming
like
chair in front of the
typical.
TV.
I don't know who the female is, but whoever wins, I'll tell when somebody wins, I'll tell you.
Right.
Just kidding. Kind of. Anyways, that's where I am in Grizzly Confidential.
Very cool. It
yeah,
sounds like a lot of good
fascinating.
information, and
Fascinating.
you just never know what you're going to read when you get those books. So it's really cool to hear you retell them to me because I'm too lazy to read them. But
Yeah.
I appreciate the knowledge, and I can hear the knowledge that you're learning from that, and it's impressive to know that people put in the kind of work to put those works together.
Yeah, it's a great author. I'm sure it's up on screen right now if you're watching on YouTube. And he's well researched, and not just researched, right? He's embedded.
Yeah.
That's immersive journalism. He's 100% in there, living in Jackson Hole, traveling to Alaska, to different places in Alaska, and just talking about the Bob Marshall. Get you credit in my book.
Can I segue to the next story here?
Please, yes.
So it's only because when we're talking about bears, and we think, and so part of what my thinking is, and if I can articulate this clearly here, we talk a lot about bears. Grizzly Confidential has been our latest thread, but more and more we have people going online and learning things about the world that are false, right?
Yeah.
So you come across a story that is false, and people go, "Oh, I'm not articulating very well. My brain hit a roadblock." Basically, what I'm trying to say is somebody will learn something on the internet, then they'll go out into the wild and try to do that, and they'll get hurt, right?
Oh yeah.
So
we've all done that.
So on our
Right?
last,
Right. I see somebody do something on YouTube and go, "Yeah, I can do some construction in my basement like that," and go out and get hurt.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Like
a little bit of a
Dry
stretch.
pour concrete, not worth your time. Now, I did it. It was kind of successful, but it was
man.
horrible. I'm embarrassed for who has to buy this house and deal with that when I leave.
But it looked easy on YouTube. That's the point.
Yeah. Anyway, but back on point here.
Yeah.
Even our last podcast, we talked about how there was a car insurance fraud claim because people were dressing up like a bear and flying the car.
Yeah.
So if people dress up in bear costumes, looks horrendously fake. And we had a bear in a zoo earlier this year in China. They're like, that's got to be somebody in a costume, but it's not. It was just that particular bear stands up on his hind legs a lot, and it looks like somebody in a costume.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be out in the woods and see what you showed me today.
Yeah.
They're going to think that it's somebody in a dang costume, and they're going to walk up on that and be like, "Hey, buddy, can I help you?" Because what you showed me was a bear crawling into a cave. It's too small. The cave is too small for the bear, but all you see are the hind legs, and it looks like somebody dressed up as a bear.
Man.
And I'm just thinking, oh, these guys are up to no good, and they got their buddy, and this is some sort of TikTok trend or something.
Totally.
And no, it was a black bear. It was huge.
Yeah. And it's just a phone scope.
But it looked fake.
It looked so fake because the opening to that cave looked like flat enough for a human. Bears aren't flat like humans.
No.
Bears have different dimensions. But man, this bear was mashed down, and you see his back paws, and you think, if it's a bear, it's not coming out.
No.
Right? If that's a real bear, it's stuck.
The first thing I thought was that's either a human in a bear costume was the first thing. The second thing I thought was, well, that's like the bear that got crushed at the beginning of The Bear, the movie.
Yeah.
And so it was neither. It was actually a bear
So,
that was not crushed.
I hate
or
to do
stuck.
this to you, but if we could go back to Grizzly Confidential.
We can go back. Yep, we got
For just a second,
sorry.
because you
I'm
brought
sorry,
up-
we just passed that exit.
You brought up the bear.
Okay, go ahead. I almost brought
Because-
up the bear earlier because you mentioned the.
There's something that happened in the bear that when you see it, you're like, that wouldn't happen in nature,
Okay.
right? A young cub and an old boar
Yeah.
creating a friendship.
Yeah.
That actually has happened.
Okay.
That is plausible.
Great.
More plausible than you might think. For
Now-
a long time, that part of the movie, you're like, well, I'm kind of losing the suspension of disbelief, right? When you try to live this fantasy that they're drawing. But they've observed it.
Yeah. Next time I put that movie on, because Vesta is not a big fan of that movie.
Yeah.
I'm just going to shout out loud the whole time that this is based on a real story. So,
And that's Bart the Bear. What about Bart the Bear? Such a great actor.
anyway, that's good. I'm actually glad to hear that, because I've always loved that movie, despite the fact that it felt
Felt unauthentic with that twist. That was probably what felt to me the most unauthentic twist, is that this baby bear is licking the wound of a wounded boar.
Yeah. And that's dangerous.
And
Don't ask me how I know that.
please don't ask him. Please. We don't want to hear that story again. But in fact, this author even said as much in the movie The Bear. This happened, that was probably an extreme example. But the example that they come across more in the wild is old boars and sub adults, right? Not necessarily orphans, but some adults. But there are sows who take orphaned cubs,
Yeah.
right? In the wild. They're not helped by anybody.
Yeah.
They just come across them and they just adopt them. They
That's
just
cool.
know that that's necessary. And so those things happen.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Way to go, adoption.
Anyway,
Agencies.
way to go, The Bear. What a great movie. So few lines,
It's just beautiful.
right? Just a beautiful movie. I should go watch it again.
Where are we going next?
Who knows?
Let's talk about so elk real quick, because this is an elk podcast.
It's supposed to be, yeah.
You showed me a really cool picture of an elk migration, but they were stymied by an elk fence. So they cross the road in front of the traffic, but they can't go anywhere because
Like a 9-foot fence.
There's a 9-foot fence.
Yeah.
Now that's helpful for the ranch or farmers, if I think that was bordering a ranch or a
I'm sure it
farm,
was.
something like that.
Yeah.
It's also useful for directing animals to those the nature overpasses,
Right.
which are really cool. We've talked a lot about those.
But they only have those high fences on one side of the road.
Yeah.
So there's probably not a land bridge.
Right. Right.
It was probably just protection of their fields.
But it's once again another one of those moments where nature and man have collided.
yeah.
Regardless of what it's there for,
Yeah.
we have to deal with that. And when elk don't have places to go, it leads them into a situation that, well, you go out to Wyoming, and you showed me another photo of, it says 1 week till opening day. And there's a bunch of elk and a bunch of snow. And I'm like, opening day? What is this, some sort of canned hunt?
There's
Like,
there's more to that picture than just the elk. There's a draft horse.
Yeah, there's a draft horse. And so basically, the elk don't have a place to migrate to. And so we got to feed them in the winter.
Right.
Is my thinking.
Right. That's the elk do migrate down, but they'll either starve to death and people like the elk, or maybe they just feed the elk. And so the elk always come back. They know there's food there. If there wasn't food there, the elk would move on.
And maybe that's maybe that's are we creating more of a problem?
Right. When we
nature?
got rid of the wolves, we noticed, hey, there's too many elk. We started feeding the elk. You brought back the wolves, and the elk still go there in the wintertime to get their food.
So guess where the wolves are going to end up? When the wolves show up.
Yeah.
Because they're going to know where to find the elk. And if they become habituated to, not habituated, but if they come to that expectation.
Desensitized, yeah.
So.
Yeah, anyway. So we'll see. We'll see. We covered another article last year about elk using human habitation as a proximity against wolves, because wolves stay away from humans.
That's right. It was an never mind. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was just an article where they're like, hey, the elk realize they're not preyed upon by the wolves if they're close to houses, because the wolves will get shot at. So they're absolutely exploiting that.
And we talked about how in Colorado that subdivision with the hundreds of elk.
Yeah.
When the wolves return to that subdivision, that's going to be a nasty.
Right. Or how will they integrate themselves into Colorado? Because Colorado's way different than Idaho, Montana, or Wyoming.
Yeah.
So there's just more people living in the Rocky Mountains, more houses and subdivisions where the elk and the wolves will be together. So anyways, and again, we'll be following the Colorado wolf story.
Yep.
As we go through the years on the Elk Season Podcast.
Just this season alone, the different things that we came across about the wolves in Colorado were kind of shocking when we found out it wasn't just transplants. There were elk the
wolves from Wyoming and Michigan
and Minnesota.
Minnesota rather.
Minnesota and Michigan.
Yeah.
So it was crazy to see that, but also kind of cool. I'm going to go to a couple PSAs here. PSA about poaching. So we hear about poaching all the time. There was a bull moose poached over on eastern Idaho. You see something, say something. I thought I had a better segue than this.
It's really all right. Don't segue. I want to expand on this poaching thing just for a second.
Feel free.
And I know I've said it. I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I saw the Idaho Fish and Game booth at like the county fair.
Yes.
And you look at all those impressive specimens that they have. And I remember the first time I saw it, I go, where did you get all these? And they go, well, they were busted poachers.
Yeah.
And I go, wow, how do you catch all those poachers? And they go, 95%, somebody calls it in. Somebody knows something. We don't catch them. We don't actively see them doing something.
Yeah.
Somebody tells us. Somebody has to tell us. Somebody knows something about this moose. Hopefully somebody tells. Hopefully somebody talks.
Yeah.
Because that's the people's moose.
Yes.
That's my moose.
Our moose. Speaking of responsibilities, there's the segue I needed. It's the end of the season. If you haven't done it yet, report your mandated hunting report. Do that. When they started getting more serious about it, and I started being more serious about hunting, this is many years ago. I get this random call in January from Idaho Fish and Game.
Yeah.
And it was a really nice lady. She goes, "Hey, did you hunt? Yeah. You had an elk tag? Yeah. Did you harvest? No. And that might be why you didn't report it, because when you don't harvest, you don't think to report." And I go, "Yeah,
oops."
So that was a very courteous of them to be nice to me, to remind me. But I no longer. I have the app. It's so convenient. In fact, I think I was at Palmerell last weekend, and I was reminded of the deer season. I didn't get to go out and hunt. And so I was actually up there while my son was taking some snowboarding lessons, and I went ahead and filled out my deer report. I'd already done my elk one.
Oh, okay.
But I did my deer tag report while I was up on the hillside.
Nice.
Down at in Palmerell. But do your mandatory reporting if you haven't done it.
And it's not because they want to keep track of you.
No.
They want to keep track of the game. They want to keep track of the numbers. It's a big numbers game, and they just need your one little data point to make sense of all the data points.
Right.
It's important.
It's very important data. So
yeah.
In Idaho, we have a lot of awesome land that's available for us to hunt.
Yeah, we do.
And there's an interesting lawsuit that popped up that we'll follow. And I don't want to get in the deep end on this right now, but
I do.
Utah filed a lawsuit against the federal government over BLM lands, saying we want to have more rights on what goes on there. Idaho wants to get in on that lawsuit because here in Idaho, southern Idaho, locally to us, we have something called the Lava Ridge Project.
Right.
Now, again, there's a lot of different sides and angles to this, but I don't disagree with the idea that a state should have the ability to say what is going on the lands. But one of the concerns is if the state gains control over those BLM lands, will it subsidize or not subsidize, but sell the land in a different way that doesn't allow me to hunt? So, for instance, the hypothetical is if I have to put up with a 400-foot tower windmill that's on the public land, but I can still hunt out there, great. But if it's been sold privately or handed over for other use, and now I can't hunt. So I think there's some things to be concerned about.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm for windmills or not. I'm just saying I have questions. And
Yeah.
I want to follow this one and see where it goes. So ultimately, it's always great to have public land that we can get out and hunt and access.
Yeah.
But
I have some friends out in the Mini-Cassia area. That's the Burley area of Idaho. It's just a little bit further east than Twin Falls is, but it's a huge farming community.
Yes.
And the Lava Ridge project, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it because I think, well, wind energy is green, right? We do need more electricity. We do need more of this, but also it takes a corporation to build green energy. Corporations are evil, right? A corporation exists to make money. If they can make money ruining our land, they will.
Yep.
If they can make money ruining our land in the name of green energy, they will.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. So something else that comes with the Lava Ridge Wind Project is roads that divides ecosystems for a lot of sensitive players in the ecosystem, lizards and birds. Yeah. Roads do something. So roads do something too for the hunter.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden there's all these roads for the Lava Ridge Wind Project. Now there's more hunters knowing they can go out there. You know, there's a lot to that, and so I innately enjoy and trust renewable energy.
Yes.
But I innately despise corporations.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think that's why I think this will be an interesting one to follow. See what happens.
And it has
with
been.
this.
Yeah.
So, because I think it's not just Utah and Idaho. Wyoming's on board with this too for their own reasons. So we'll see what comes of that. And again, I don't know what the answer will be. I have questions. I have curiosities. We'll see.
Yeah. So, in the book, The Grizzly in the Driveway.
Yeah.
I know we're done talking about bears.
The bears.
But they talked about the Malheur, Oregon.
Yep.
They talked about Bundy.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Ted.
Ted. I was going to say
Bundy.
Ted. Not Al Bundy. That's Married with Children.
I don't know his name.
I don't know. The DB Bundy. I mean, just a terrible human. Just a terrible human being. That and what he wanted was the federal land in Oregon to be turned over to the state, to become state land. And that's where I started to understand why it's important for the land to be owned federally instead of by the state. The state cannot afford to fight those forest fires.
Right.
When they do, if it is their land and they have to pay to fight those forest fires, then they're going to have to sell that land to someone to pay for that.
Yeah.
It's a big mess. And BLM and state-owned land, there's a whole list of distinctions, right? There's Forest Service, there's wilderness, which is different than Forest Service. There's BLM, which a lot of BLM borders Forest Service, and there's state land, which is like checkered in there with the BLM. And so it's a big mess. So giving states autonomy over that land for those purposes makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Just saying that makes me nervous. Having the federal government involved also makes me nervous.
I think the federal government should hold the land, but give states more of a say on what is done in relation to projects like Lava Ridge.
Right. And hopefully there's a better
negotiation of sorts,
working together, and not one side having complete control.
Right.
That's what I'm for.
Yeah.
I'm for
working together.
I'm for fighting it out. Right?
Yeah.
That's what they do. That's what the ecosystem does. Right?
Yeah.
Let's see who survives, but
it'll balance.
Hopefully it's not a lawsuit thing, and we can continue to fight it out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Did you want to talk about artifacts stolen from?
No, I just found that curious. I didn't hit the story. I didn't talk about. There was just a guy who stole some artifacts from the Montana Historical Society and sold them and made some money, and now he's busted and going to prison. And
classic. That leaves us at our last
practically
couple of
a Hallmark
stories.
Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Sorry, what is it?
Wow. Let's talk snakes.
Yeah.
So let's go to Australia first.
It's summer down there.
Yeah. It's so cool. You showed me a snake like literally jumping up off the sand as it wriggled around.
It's called a kangaroo snake.
Yeah.
And it was only, I don't know, a foot long.
Yeah.
Maybe as big around as a pencil, but it was coming off the ground by a foot.
Yeah. And all I could think of is if I'm a biologist putting myself in that space, this animal must have evolved to avoid getting burned on hot sand, so it goes from shade to shade.
Yeah. That makes sense. Now, I didn't even think about it, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, the spitting cobra? The cobra, you've heard of spitting cobra.
I'm trying to think of something quippy, and it didn't come to me.
The spitting cobra rises up and will spit into your eyes to blind you. And researchers are finally like, I think just in this past year, published a paper saying the only reason they can do that is because of humans.
Huh.
Why would a snake need to spit at eye level for humans?
Yeah.
There's only one reason.
Yeah,
human eyes.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very defensive mechanism against humans. So it's not just something they use on other animals.
You kind of want to know what that story is all about, you know? What led to that?
That's hundreds of thousands of years of evolution of these people, these things used to come along and just bash my head in with a stick.
Yeah.
Well, I had an ancestor that learned to spit in their face, and it didn't happen to him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's it. That's the story.
The second snake story is even more bizarre. There's a deer chewing on a snake in the borrow pit.
Yeah.
Like, what's that about?
Yeah. What is that about?
I don't know.
And the only reason I brought it up, or I showed it, is that the snakes being chewed on.
Yeah.
But not eaten.
Yeah.
By a deer.
There's got to be something in the snake that's like salty or something. I don't know.
Or they just recognized it as a danger.
Yeah, and
said, you know what? I just don't want this thing living anymore.
Deer bubble gum.
Well, right. if it was, we talked just a couple weeks ago about deer or snakes in Florida being big enough to eat deer.
Yeah.
If a deer sees a snake, it goes, maybe someday you'll be big enough to eat me. I'm going to stop that now.
Yeah. Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But
either.
You're right. Yeah, micronutrients. There could be something in there because sometimes animals will eat some really strange things.
Yeah, I
saw for some really strange reasons.
I didn't capture it, and I wish I had, but I saw a story about a squirrel eating mice.
Yeah.
So we'll have to follow up on that.
Carnivorous squirrel.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
We can get in a whole rabbit hole of odd things we've seen, right?
Yeah.
That is so stool is the last thing that I have here.
This should have been higher on the list today.
I know. I'm so sorry
but
that it's the last thing.
Right here's fine.
It's just a stool, but it's funny because we've talked about this stool on this podcast, maybe on season 1.
We talk about where to sit down during elk season
all the time,
every year. Not every podcast. But more podcasts than just exist in elk season.
Yeah.
Because finding just a comfortable place to sit your butt is one of the most difficult things. And we have tried a list of things.
Yes, we have.
And which includes stools.
Yeah.
Stools with homemade attachments.
Yeah.
Other stools.
Air-filled.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And extra cushions.
Extra cushions.
And everything. Trying to figure out I just want to sit down. I don't want to have a broken off limb jabbing me in the rump.
I've gotten to a point where I've just given up and I figure out how to just mold the landscape to meet my comfort because I'm just tired of the hassle of the things that I've tried to sit on.
But it's been more than a decade of realizing there's just no getting around it. You're not going to sit down and be comfortable.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times when we think, oh, if I had a chair right here, you don't, there's no place to put a chair.
No.
There's no place. It's 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
You can't, there's nowhere to set a chair. It's nice that you want to try.
It's a sheer rock face.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. And so you just shuffle around and suffer and all the things we bring to have a comfortable sit.
Yeah.
And
so it makes me wonder what would this be like? Because it looks like it's something you could pack.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how is the base of that going to work? Because the stool that I have that unfolds and has 4 legs it can fit around things and it can sink into the dirt. But this thing can't. And will
Right.
it be awkward to sit on? So I don't know.
Right.
I'm
Right.
curious. They're only like $30-$40.
You can kind of carve out a flat spot, right? You take some of the high ground and move it to the low ground, and then there's
Yeah.
like a level spot. And maybe you could,
But this chair is good for like 500 pounds.
but it's also adjustable.
Yeah.
So if you need your knees up a little bit higher for your elbows, for
Yeah.
glassing, you can lower that stool,
see,
right?
now it's starting to sell itself.
right? So you go, because it's totally adjustable. This
Yeah.
accordion kind of
So
thing.
I need to get my hands on one in person and really see
Yeah.
because having it in an image and seeing people use it is one thing, but when you deal with a pack and
a practical application.
when you actually know the size and scope of it, what
Right.
that means for your pack and what you're gonna have to haul around,
Yeah.
that can change things.
Yeah, and how it works when you get it up there.
Yeah.
I got all excited about having a good chair to sit in with some, slings across the bottom and just going, man, what a waste of time that was.
Yep. But it's fun to explore, so I guess that's
It is, and maybe we should try, just like we do food. We try different foods.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's so easy to cook decent, fresh food. Not vegetables or anything, but to experiment with equipment and food and a stool or some place to sit down is definitely on the list. So look forward to that.
Yeah. There's a lot to come. So let's talk about 2025.
Yeah. 2025 is coming up. I have, how are we doing on time? I haven't even.
We are pretty much, we're at 45 minutes.
Wow. We're cranking along. Well, you know what? We'll probably have plenty to talk about next time, but we can talk about it later. Fitness goals, weight goals, New Year's resolutions,
Right.
That kind of thing. So we'll cover that and go over what we expect in the 2025 elk season when we start season 4.
Yeah, season 4.
After the new year sometime.
Yes.
Sometime in January we'll be around.
Yeah, one of those weeks.
It used to be when I dropped David off after elk season, I would just say, okay, I'll see you next elk season.
Yeah.
And we really wouldn't talk for a year.
But a whole lot doesn't happen in that time. And this really has been beneficial to keep, because wow.
Yeah, to keep your mind on it.
It keeps my mind on it, but I've been more active physically this year too. Like I've stayed in the cardio,
right,
and I've just
because you're thinking about it.
Yeah,
that's the point of the Elk Season podcast, to keep you thinking about elk season. You should always be working on your never skip leg day, right? Always be working on your fitness. Always be working on your Google Earth skills and your.
I am in a mad fight with holiday foods right now. Like we are duking it out because I am trying to make sure that I don't overdo that.
Oh man!
When I made a double batch of my personal, Reagan makes them pretty well, but no bake cookies. I made a double batch last weekend, and I'm fighting those this week. I'm like,
you know what we made? I'll tell you what, we made one thing this week. I asked Reagan. Reagan makes some really good chocolate chip cookies.
Oh,
but I go, Reagan, will you make some chocolate chip cookies? But instead of lard, will you use bacon grease? And so we had bacon grease chocolate chip cookies. I need to bring you some. They're so good.
On the surface, it sounds gross, but I get where you're going with it.
No, fat doesn't have flavor. Yeah. Fat doesn't have flavor. The bacon fat hints a little bit because there are some particulates in there, but it's pretty clean fat. And some researchers, I think British researchers, did a study of 1,000 different foods, and the top 10 nutritious foods is pork fat.
Yeah.
And it makes sense if they're so biologically similar to us, then the foods that they eat and the micronutrients that cling to their fat cells, right? That's bioavailable micronutrients for us. So it makes sense that pigs are very similar to us and that they would be nutritious for us and help us grow kidneys.
Yeah.
Right? There was a kidney transplant this week. A genetically modified pig kidney.
Yeah.
As a successful transplant.
They did that with a heart last year.
Yeah.
It didn't turn out.
So anyways, because of the similarities, that's why I eat Spam.
Yeah. All right. That wraps it up.
That wraps up season 3 of the Elk Season Podcast.
Thanks for watching.
We'll be back next year. LOL. Goodbye.
Cheers. In the morning light, before dawn,
bow grip tight, heart beating strong. Through the forest, ancient giants roam, in the land where the wild calls me home. Through the whispering pines and the autumn breeze, driven by the chase, crisp air I breathe. With every step I take, earth beneath my feet, in nature's beauty where the hunter and elk meet. The mountains rise, kissed by the sun, in September where I belong. Bugles echo loudly through the veil, a symphony of an ancient tale. Through the whispering pines and the autumn breeze, driven by the chase, crisp air I breathe. With every step I take, earth beneath my feet, in nature's beauty where the hunter and elk meet. Silent as the morning mist, I travel on with careful grace. Every shadow, every sound surrounds me in this wild embrace. The challenge and the thrill, the patience and the skill, in the dance of life and nature, my heart's forever filled. As the sun sets, shadows long and deep, I find my place with the memories I keep. The chase and the beauty of a day gone by. Deep in the mountains, my spirit cries. Through the whispering pines and the autumn breeze, driven by the chase, crisp air I breathe. With every step I take, earth beneath my feet, in nature's beauty out where the hunter and elk meet. Here's to the wild places where the elk and I both roam. The chase that brings us closer to the place that I call home. In the stillness of the forest, in the grandeur of the land, I am one with nature's wonder, with my bow here in my hand.